Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are here in the Cherokee Batting Range podcast studio getting ready to record episode number 242, kind of keeping in some discussions we've had on everything fast pitch. We're going to talk about the transfer portal a little bit, but maybe an unintended outcome, something that nobody was really thinking about that might be happening with the portal that we just wanted to throw out there for something for coaches to think about, because I do think it does relate in many ways back to some things that are happening in the travel ball world too. So before we get into that, let's talk about the sponsors. First, the Anderson Bat Company. Everything Fast Pitch is very proud to have Anderson Bat Company as our presenting sponsor. Anderson Bat Company is using the latest and greatest bat technology to corner the market in the fast pitch world. They have the -9 Rocket Tech, the -10 Carbon, and the -11 Carbon Light. Anderson Bat Company is using this technology to put a high-performing bat in the hands of hitters that really know the difference between a good bat and a great bat. We're also working with Anderson to provide a discount for all of our listeners. Go to the Anderson Bat Company website and order your bats. Use the EFP20 discount, which is for everything fast pitch, and you'll get a 20% discount. And again, make sure you take advantage of that EFP20. It's a great way for you to save that additional 20% and help to support the podcast. Also, please become a patron if you can afford to help us. We've got a great group of patrons that have been very loyal and have supported the podcast for several years, but we would love to see more people come on board. Again, we're talking about $5, $10, or $20 a month. You go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch, get signed up there, and we would love to see you come on board and help support the podcast. So, Don, one of the things that Stan and I talked about earlier today that I think has some validity, that the transfer portal obviously is the new shiny object. It's changing the game of college softball and really all college sports in a gigantic way. But I'm kind of curious if the transfer portal isn't also kind of a way for players that maybe are about ready to quit, maybe about ready to give up their careers, that maybe need a escape strategy, a way to get out without, just flat out saying I quit. Rather than saying I quit, I'm going to go to the transfer portal. And then when I go to the transfer portal, I just can't find the right fit. I just can't find in the right school. I guess it's in.
So that's going to help me along.
Right. So instead of having the hard discussion where you have to sit down with your parents and say, this thing that you invested a couple of $100,000 in and you spent all those weekends and all that time and all that money and all that effort, the fact that I know it's going to break your heart, but I just don't want to play softball anymore. I need to stop. So rather than that,
you might be onto something there, Tori.
I'm going to go into the portal. And then after being in the portal for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long it is, well, none of these,
maybe
really,
even turn down a couple of nice opportunities, but maybe not as flashy as
I don't want to go that far away from home. I don't want to go to a smaller school. That school might not have my major. That school might not be strong enough academically or whatever it is. And so I just started to think about this idea, and when Stan mentioned it earlier, about is the transfer portal sort of an escape mechanism that some kids are using? Because one of the things that made me think of it, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how almost 50% of the kids who go into the portal never find a new school.
Yep.
And while some of that makes sense from a purely softball standpoint, I also have always thought that some kids that go into the transfer portal really aren't looking to go to a new school. They just want to, they're just not going to play softball again.
No, I think there might be a lot of validity to that for sure, Tori, because again, that is a pretty tough conversation to have with mom and dad in particular. And I think a lot of times that the college game and the college journey might be a little bit more challenging personally for everybody with the studies, with the training, with the early morning workouts, all the extra things that we probably knew about, but we didn't really quite get it. Once we experience that, it might not be the thing that we're, still excited about doing. And
right.
That portal does give us that maybe more comfortable way to break the news that we're all done.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just, again, we've talked about the transfer portal at the point of fatigue.
We're over it.
Point in time. But the idea that it could be the escape hatch that some kids are looking for is something that I think is worth mentioning. And again, not that it's necessarily a bad thing for those players, because if it is a smoother way, a less disruptive way. And I had a girl a couple of years ago that was a really, really talented player. Signed, this is back in the early recruiting days, and committed to, and then ultimately signed with an SEC powerhouse school. And once she got there, it was really clear that what she thought she was signing up for isn't what she really got.
Right.
Ended up deciding to leave that school, put her name in the transfer portal. While that was going on, she was still, had come in for a couple of lessons and was working on a couple of things with me in anticipation of making this move to another school. And about after the second or third lesson that summer, she said, I might be going to, this other school and not even playing. And like, well, why are we still working then if you're not going to keep playing? Like, well, I'm not 100% sure yet, but I don't really like the coach at the school I think I'm going to transfer to, so I don't think I could play for her. And long story short, as I sorted it all out, what it was is code that, hey, this whole big time, everybody expects me to be a professional type softball college player, committing my entire life to being great at this game, has lost a little bit of its luster. I can't really tell my dad because he's the super gung-ho, super softball dad. So this is sort of a way, and it was a way for her to manage
softer landing.
Yeah, and so ended up going from a national championship caliber program where she was not playing very much as a freshman to another national championship caliber softball school where she never even went out for the team.
No, I think there's a lot to be said for all that, Tori, and the journey of getting to go to college is such a grind now. I mean, to be one of those kids, like you're saying, to play at a big school and to have that opportunity, that included tons and tons and tons of preparation to even be offered that option. And I think some people are up for that 24/7, 7 days a week grind. I call it a grind, but it's fun and happy for them. But I think that gets old for so many. And, we talk about kids having to isolate into one sport at such a young age, and we don't get that variety in our youth for, doing a lot of different sports in fear of not getting that opportunity.
Right.
And there might be validity to that too. Yeah. But by the time you get there and then it's a commitment for another 4 years of that, even escalated to another level of more grind, that's not for everybody. Right. So, and it's sad when it ends, but it's going to end,
right. Well, at some point. We talked on Everything Fast Pitch last week about how for a whole lot of kids, the careers have ended now. But, the idea when we decide we want to be a college athlete in any sport, but definitely I can speak, and you and I can both speak from plenty of experience with this. If you decide that you're going to be a college softball player, it is going to be a grind. I don't care how much you love it. There's still going to be times where, oh my gosh, it's 6 days a week.
I got to do it again today.
It's every day. It's nonstop. It never ends. Again,
my legs hurt and my arm hurts and
So I get it, and I understand it. I know that it's not for everybody, and if this is a way, using the portal as a soft landing is a way to, get yourself out of something that isn't really what you want to keep doing, I guess that's okay too. So, but just wanted to throw that out there as something to ponder. Because again, we mentioned a couple weeks ago, 45% of the players that went into the portal in 2022 didn't find a new school. So obviously, they're not all really looking that hard, because I think there might have been a few more opportunities that could have been grabbed if those players were interested. So that's going to wrap up number 242. Please make sure you support the Anderson Bat Company. Become a patron if you can. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Make sure you reach out to us at everythingfastpitch@gmail.com or fastpitchprep@gmail.com with questions, comments, ideas, suggestions for topics. And make sure you go to the fastpitchprep.com website, order your Square Cuts training discs there, $49.95 a dozen. You also have access to the YouTube channel and tons of blogs on the blog post. So that's going to wrap up 242. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer, Stan Lewis, this is Coach Tori saying thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.